but we're just really, really glad you're here. And I will introduce myself for those of you who don't know me, and Carrie will have an opportunity to do the same in a minute. But the first thing I always like to do is to first welcome you, as I've just done, tell you a little bit about our goals so that you have a good frame of reference for what types of tools and information you're going to receive in this hour. The other thing is that you have probably already seen Katie, our head of content at Hello Divorce. She's introduced herself in the chat box. She's going to be including some links that reference some of the things that we're talking about today. She will also include those links in the follow-up email that you'll receive with the webinar recording. So again, don't feel like you have to run to click on those links. If they interest you, we will get them to you sooner than later. The other thing is that you're welcome to use Q&A. You're welcome to ask us questions along the way. We love that. Remember though, if you do use chat, you can message everyone or the host directly. If you message everyone and you've used your name to register, then your name will show. So if you want to remain anonymous, best to use the Q&A function or to chat directly to Carrie or I. So our goals today is to understand the benefits of gathering with others for emotional support. Obviously, you get that, you know that is likely something that could be really helpful to you, but we want to further dive deeper into it. And I think that goes into the next goal, which is understanding divorce is a process, not merely an event. And oftentimes we talk about getting divorced. And getting divorced is actually like the final thing, right? The last thing that happens. That getting a divorce is the legal piece when you get that divorce judgment. But there's so much that happens in between. And that's the period of time from when you or your spouse or both of you decide that it's time to get a divorce until that final judgment. And maybe even after that, we want to see you have the most amount of support, because transition is hard, change is hard. We want to talk a little bit about the divorce game plan, that period of time I just mentioned where we're sort of in transition in between, how we can avoid overwhelm so that we're making decisions from a place of calm to the extent we can, as opposed to a place of fear or anger or overwhelm. Because as you know, some of these choices are really big choices that have a long and serious impact on how the rest of your divorce and your life goes. And so we really want to help you to figure out the best way to calm some of that overwhelm so that these decisions that you're making now are setting the foundation for not just how your divorce will go, but how you'll walk into that next best chapter. And then, of course, it's a webinar. And so we will have an intro offer for circles, which we'll introduce, and a promotional code for Hello Divorce. If you're just starting your divorce and you want to have us help you through the legal process, then thank you for attending. And we definitely will offer that code to you throughout the webinar. So I'll be brief here because I see a lot of you have attended our webinars before. But if you don't know who I am, I've been a lawyer for 16 years. I'm a certified family law specialist. I'm also a mediator. I am also, and what's most near and dear to my heart, is the founder of Hello Divorce. And my goal with Hello Divorce is to make the divorce process easier, simpler, more affordable, and even friendlier to a certain extent. So what I saw is that lawyer up and fight sort of traditional, this is how we do divorce model wasn't working for most people. For some, it was just way too expensive. For others, battling it out was not the best resolution or the best way to reorganize their lives and their families. And so I poured my heart and soul into founding Hello Divorce, and that is where my biggest focus is now. Let me turn to Carrie, because I'm so excited to have you here, Carrie. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do at Circles.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me again. My name is Carrie Cantrell. In addition to being a facilitator at Circles, I am a therapist and a life coach. I have my own coaching practice where I really actually help people focus on gaining their emotional wealth in life and live a more balanced life. So when you're talking about overcoming that overwhelm in this transition period, I help people do that in all different stages of life. And my passion in life is actually helping people through this.
Sorry.
It's okay. You got me distracted, but that's like what I do, right? Like, anyways, so one of my passions in life is actually running groups, because I feel like groups have this really special place. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys about this today. And at Circles, I feel like in support groups, we're really helping people overcome life's challenges in a different way. For those of you who don't know, Circles is a platform for emotional support. We connect people during these obstacles in life, such as divorce, separation, grief, and even when you're overcoming other kinds of relationship challenges like narcissism and things of that. So we have all different kinds of niches that we help people through, but we connect you with other people who are going through similar challenges, and you get a safe space to work with these people who are going through the similar challenges on overcoming it. So it's a different kind of support than what you might think of when you work with a therapist like myself. So it's really unique, and I love doing it. So thanks.
I love that. Your passion shines through, and I can't wait to dig in and ask you a bunch of questions and
I can't wait either.
And all that good stuff. I'm showing this slide. You can read it on your own, and then I'll probably take the slides off for a minute or more while Carrie and I chat. But I read an article a long time ago that really resonated with a lot of the people that I know. Of course, I shared it with them. And I read it again the other day, and I thought that I would bring it up here because I think that it might be helpful. It might resonate to you too. And it was an article that I read in On Being. And it was about how when we get married, when we have children, when we have any sort of big life event, we usually think about community. We have baby showers and we have weddings. Even in death, we have funerals. Mm-hmm. We have all of these ways to get the support that we need in community. And yet with divorce, we end up doing so much of it alone. And we don't generally come together as community to rally around our friends and family as they are getting divorced. In fact, a lot of people don't really know what to say or do, which is crazy given that it's 2022. But I think people just sort of struggle with it. And as we know, divorce is not just the end of a marriage. There's so many other divorces during that period of time, right? Like divorce of rituals, of family traditions, of communication, of intimacy. There's so many different stages that we walk through during and after the divorce process. And so often we're doing it on our own. And so, I just wanted to start there and acknowledge that if that's how you're feeling, I certainly get it. I know Carrie gets it. And it probably leads great into the first question, which is, why is it important to find emotional support during your divorce?
For sure. This question makes me think of three main areas, and I think they're also connected. I mean, as the therapist, I'm always going to say, well, the most important reason is so that you can heal. I wouldn't be the therapist if I didn't say that. And I always like to think of it as if you have two people and one person gets emotional support, and emotional support can mean a lot of different things. And we'll probably talk about that as we move through. But one person gets emotional support and the other person doesn't necessarily get emotional support for whatever the reason, that person who's able to let themselves have the experience of gathering some support from their friends, family, or professional support is going to have a much easier time at the end of their journey. They're not going to get stuck in the to-do list in that phase. They're not going to, I see your slide here. They're not going to have more of that tension during the process, because they're going to gain a lot in the process. They're going to gain the skills to manage it all. And they're going to be able to sink into the feelings that they're having through that process. If they're having sadness, fear, anger, they're going to be able to acknowledge them because of the emotional support process, talking to people, understanding what they're feeling. And when you do that, you gain a new level of awareness. You get to this level of acceptance, not acceptance of the situation necessarily, but you get to a level of acceptance of, this is how I'm feeling. And when we gain that level of acceptance because of having positive, healthy emotional supports in our life and having those skills that we gain through them, it helps our healing process move forward rather than be restricted. I think on the other end of that, we avoid or distract from some of the things that we're experiencing. We don't let ourselves lean into it. So we find distractions that don't let us recognize what's going on around us. And that's when sometimes we see people come out with the emotions a few years later, or they maybe misdirect some of the experiences they're having with anger and frustration on the people that are there for them, because they're trying to bottle it up inside.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that comes up a lot for our clients is that, like, a lot of them have a fairly amicable divorce. Not that there isn't conflict. There's always going to be conflict, but they feel almost like they don't, because it's fairly amicable, they shouldn't, or they can't give themselves permission to really grieve or to feel lonely, especially if it was their choice. Like, my choice to divorce, I feel like that's what's best for me and or my family, my spouse. And so, like, if I made that choice, like, do I really get to give myself permission to feel heartbreak? What would be your response to that?
Well, and that's often a lot of what people have to work through. I think if we had to put a word on what you're talking about, a lot of what people in my circles call that is shame. Like, they're having shame or guilt is another word, guilt around the process that they're in, whether it was their decision or not. Maybe they were the one who prompted the divorce, and that's why they're having those feelings, but sometimes they can't put the word on it. So that might be the first step that they get in the emotional support process, is helping them create the word, understand what that word means. And then sometimes what we might even do during the emotional support process is help them reframe those thoughts so that they can actually know what they're feeling. Because sometimes those initial thoughts of shame or guilt aren't really, maybe they feel like shame or guilt, but when we stop and we look at the facts or the data, you could say, around the situation, we're able to come up with different emotions that we want to replace those with. And I think, like, the other benefits of emotional support or indirect benefits are kind of what comes later down the line, which, if you can work through some of these things, like these emotions that we're talking about, you might be able to make clear decisions. The result at the end of the road is a better quality of life. Like, you're going to get to all these more clear places that emotional support and the healing process allow you to get to.
Yes, like, this is just like one tool in a, like, big toolbox, right? Like, to be able to know that on a weekly basis or monthly or whatever you're doing with the support group, like, there's a group there that is simply there to hear you, maybe validate, and just be able to connect that's outside of like all the other people in your life who love you but have strong feelings and like want to, they might be really angry with your ex, or they might be really concerned for you and your well-being and will you be okay, and sometimes that concern doesn't necessarily feel like support. And yes, right. Another thing that a lot of our Instagram followers tell us and our clients tell us is that divorce was like this really amazing opportunity to come alive. Like for so long, they kind of felt like they were letting each day pass them by. They weren't necessarily feeling really connected to their future or what they wanted for themselves. Sometimes they were pouring their lives into their kids or their spouse just to keep things okay. And so this is like this great opportunity to rediscover who you are and what makes you tick. So I promise I will go, I'm putting you on the spot here because we do have questions that she knew I would go through, and I will get to them. But like, do you have anything, like, do you, in your experience of facilitating these circles, do you feel that way? Do a lot of people like, aside from the pain and the hurt, are they also experiencing or exploring what life could look like going forward?
I mean, you are just going down our path of questions anyways, Erin, because I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about were the emotional challenges that people experience during this process, right? And we're already starting to explore that, right? Like the shame, the guilt. And what you're really talking about in that question is how people struggle with or go through a process. Not everybody struggles with it, but this process of rebuilding their identity. And so people go through this unique process because, you had this life as you once knew it. And now you're at this place where not only are you grieving maybe the future you lost, as you mentioned earlier, or the future as you imagined it maybe, but you're also at this place where you're having to rediscover who you are as an individual. And so you have to almost rebuild, refresh, refocus your identity, whatever kind of word fits with you, because everybody has a unique word that they're like, yes, I'm not recreating, I'm not reimagining, because I already am myself. But, my support system is part of that. I've already lost parts of people in my life. Maybe I lost my ex's family and I was really close to them and they gave me a lot of my identity. So part of this is our support system, our natural support system that's built in that we're losing. But part of it is our regular routine during the day. Part of it is what we did in our spare time for hobbies. And a support group, a circle, helps people figure those things out again. Your support circle is going to challenge you to get out there and try something new, take a new class, listen to new music, read a new book, simple things to more difficult things that help you figure out who you are in this phase of life and moving forward.
And so so anytime you're, going through a big life transition like this, there's lots of emotions, right? And one day you might feel terribly lonely or sad, and the next day you might feel really hopeful. And there's like all the emotions that come in between. So as a facilitator, knowing that all these different, like the different people in the groups, first of all, I want to know how many people are in each group. And people might be at different stages. Like, how do you account for that so that everybody feels like they're getting something from the group?
I think that's a really great question. I like to call what you're describing the emotional roller coaster. Because you can't expect that things are going to just be a trajectory upwards, that, yesterday was worse, so tomorrow is going to be better. I mean, yes, I hope tomorrow is going to be better, but it's not like every day gets a little bit better in a journey like this. It is up and down every day. And I think in a circle or in a support group, the way it kind of works is that we show up where everybody's at. We don't expect anybody to be anywhere that they're not at that day. So we have days where one person just needs to cry, one person needs 30 minutes of the group versus everyone else just needs to do a quick check-in. And the group, because they're so used to each other, they've created a comfort with each other. They're able to adjust that way. They're able to adjust in a way. They're able to show up for each other. I always say my groups don't show up always for themselves. They're not there just to share their story, ask their questions, but they show up for each other. So if you're not there one day, they're going to be like, Carrie, did you hear from person A? Because she's not here and we want to know where she is. You know, they show up 100% for each other in an established group. Like new groups, people are still getting to know each other, but in an established group, they really truly care about each other. And if somebody needs more time that day, they're there for it. Now, it's also my job to make sure everybody gets what they need. And that's my role as a facilitator, is to ensure that the group is a safe, beneficial place for everyone, and that everybody has that time to ask questions, express what they need. And then I always like to kind of do a little sprinkle of growth in there too. So maybe something to encourage them to grow or new thought, because I want them to get everything they came for that day.
Well, that's why I love circles so much too, because we share that vision. Like, we don't discount the hard reality of divorce, but at the same time, we so want people to feel inspired and hopeful and use this as an opportunity to, you know, take an obstacle and, you know, reclaim your narrative. And it's interesting because I've never had, in helping with thousands of divorces over the years, I've never had anyone come back to me and say, like, I wish I was still married to that person. Even the people that were so desperate to stay married and did everything they could to try to save their marriage, no one ever says to me after the healing journey, I really wish I was still in that relationship. It's like they come out, and if they're willing to do the work, they're willing to really do that emotional work, then they just come out in such a better place. And sometimes they don't even realize they're doing the emotional work. They're just trying to find tools to help them cope with the now, because the now is challenging. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you've like taken this big leap of self-growth that feels so good. So, and I know Circles shares that. Like, I really love that. And we are so careful as to who we work with or partner with, because we want those ideals and that mission to help people be like number one at the top.
Yeah.
What kind of like outside of the group setting, which we'll talk a little bit. Wait, first of all, how many people are in a group?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about what Circles looks like and what you can expect. So we circles are up to about 7 people you can expect in a new circle. I would say established circles might be a little smaller because they've been together for a long time and people move on in life. I like it as a facilitator when people move on in life, when they're healthy and they're like, hey, I'm getting back out there. So usually about 7 seats in a circle for members to participate. And they meet weekly on video chat for an hour. And then during the week, they have a chat room. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Let me rephrase. So
no, I think I got it.
They meet once a week on video room, like Zoom, for 1 hour. And then during the week, they will have a chat room available to them at all hours with their same group members. So if they need something, they need some extra support, they want to share a link or a book they like, they can jump on in there. And when they're in the video chat, they have a professional facilitator like myself, who's a mental health expert, to help guide the group. And on top of that, Circles has a bunch of like webinars and tools that they'll send them throughout the week to help encourage growth.
Do you find that a lot of people take advantage of the chat room, that they are connecting with each other between sessions? And is it a requirement or not?
It's definitely not a requirement. I do think it depends on the group. I find some of my groups with younger demographics are taking advantage of it. All of my divorce and separation groups love the chat room, but I do have some groups that are on different topics with different age demographics. I find that's a huge factor, and they don't take advantage of it. But each group creates its own identity. I have some groups
That's
that
great.
like to laugh a lot, and I have some groups who like to get down to the nitty gritty, and I have some groups who really enjoy sharing fun things that they've done for self-care that week. So every group creates its own personality.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, when I see the question and I'm leading into it, one of the problems that I've seen on like Facebook groups, and believe me, I've gone to like every Facebook group imaginable when it comes to divorce, and but sometimes a lot of what it ends up focusing on is like all the bad things about your ex. And like it makes sense to want to vent and talk about them, but really there isn't generally a facilitator there to help people like refocus the conversation on like the tools that they can use to take care of them, and move forward. And so that is what my concern is, or what my concern would be about any chat group. And I like the idea that there is a facilitator that's sort of watching over. But the question that came from one of our attendees is like, does the facilitator monitor and pipe in the chat room, or are you just kind of there to make sure that nobody's being nasty, and then you show up on the call, the weekly call?
Definitely the chat group is an extension of our group. So as I mentioned, it's the same people. So there's already a connection formed with these people. You're with them in your video meeting each week, as well as your facilitator. As the facilitator, I monitor the chat group. I watch as things come in. I really let my groups, and I can only speak for myself, but I let my groups create their own connection in the chat room. But I do go in there a few times a week, and I post some, cool pictures for thought, or a quote that I really want them to think about, or maybe a little task. So there's even some prompts from our mental health professionals in the chat room each week to get them going. In addition to that, you have a one-on-one chat with your facilitator of your group. So if you're really having a rough day and you're like, I'm not sure if I should put this in the chat room, what do you think? You can do that, and all of us will respond. We monitor our one-on-one chats. We monitor the chat room throughout the week, in addition to meeting with our groups. So that's part of our responsibility.
Okay, that's great. That's really helpful. I didn't know. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I'll also say that, as I mentioned, Circles is all about creating safe spaces. So if something was to happen in the group chat during the week, it would be addressed as a group in the weekly meeting, because even the chat room is meant to be a safe space.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know about the chat group, but I really like that there's an opportunity to have access to each other and the facilitator between meetings. And I like to think about all the just incredible conversations and resources that can come from that. I love that. Okay, so if they signed up for a support group, you might have already said this, but like how long, and I know like some people like opt out after a certain period of time, but like what is the initial commitment? What's the expectation? How long would you at least, stay in the group for?
So there is no initial commitment from Circles. Circles doesn't say, hey, you have to commit to this period of time. And for our divorce and separation groups, there is no like, hey, this is an 8-week group. We don't really do that. What I will do is give you an idea of how my groups have ran so far. So I currently have 2 divorce and separation groups. They've actually been running for 6 to 8 months at this point. They're tight, cohesive groups. And obviously we've lost people along the way who, I like to say, moved on in life, kind of like if you had that coworker who won the lottery, just kidding.
Yeah.
Who moves on. It's kind of like people have, gotten healthy and decided that the group's not right for them anymore. But the groups are still going 6 to 8 months later. The divorce process is a long process, as you know, Erin, for a lot of people. And depending on what state you're in, it's a long time to be in a transition period. And we still have people in our groups that are already past the finalization of their divorce. And they're like, I need to just continue working on my emotional health.
Yeah, there's not like a magic wand, right? Like you're divorced and your divorce is final. So now everything is great and feels amazing. But so that's good to hear.
And that's part of the reason why it's not like, oh, this is an 8-week group.
Okay.
Because you don't know how long groups are going to go. With that being said, though, my recommendation as a therapist, anytime you join any support group, is give it at least 3 groups to decide if it's right for you. Because one of the biggest barriers to people joining groups is that it's anxiety provoking. You feel nervous. You're joining a group of people that you don't know to talk about something that's really hard to talk about. So going your first time, it's probably still going to feel uncomfortable. So
even a few times, I mean, I can think of a lot, like the best groups I ever joined. I feel like every week before it actually started, I'd get like some anxiety and be like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'd rather like binge watch something or whatever. Then I just like grab a glass of wine or get some tea. And the minute I get on there, I feel so much better. So I love that.
And usually when people leave groups, they're like, I feel so much better. Thank you. So like, even when they leave, they're saying the same thing. Like, I'm so glad I came today. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I want to remind everyone about divorce too, you keep hearing us say journey, journey, journey. And in some states, of course, there's the waiting period. So even if you had a full agreement today, you wouldn't be officially divorced for 90 days, 6 months, depending on the state. But like, I also just want to remind everyone that divorce, unless there's an emergency, like your spouse has cut you off completely from finances or taken your kids to another state and you have no idea where they are, unless there's that kind of an emergency, nothing is going to happen overnight. You have time. So even deciding whether or not to just respond to a divorce petition or a complaint, usually you have at least 30 days. So I just want everyone to remind that if you're feeling a lot of anxiety about like making decisions, coming to an agreement, but you still don't even know what your legal rights are or who has all the financial documents, that's okay. Like this will happen. And I'd rather have you take your time than have it take over your life. And so just a little reminder there. We are getting a lot of questions around how the groups are formed. So if you can speak to that, Carrie, are the groups for women only? Are they focused, like how are they formed? Is there an intake process? Like tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll follow up with some of the other questions.
Yeah. So at Circles, I see Katie's putting the link in the chat box. So you can click on that link. You'll be taken to the Circles website. Circles actually ask you a few questions about yourself on the website, and then it will make a recommendation. If at any point you feel like that recommendation is not right for you, I think there's a chat box on the website. You can chat and you'll get someone directly and they'll be able to help find a group that's right for you. But typically what happens is after you find a group that works for you and your schedule and the description sounds about right, and I'll talk about some of what I see with divorce groups in those segments. But once you find a group that sounds right for you, you'll have a date and time, you'll have a login, and you'll be able to click to join the group. But also you'll get a welcome email from your facilitator. You'll be able to fill out a little bio online that you can share with your facilitator and your fellow group members. But also you'll be able to do a welcome call with your facilitator. Now, you can choose to do that welcome call before you join the group, which is ideal. I'd love to know all of my group members before they join, but sometimes people are in that emotional state and they're like, I just need to come. And so I'm okay with that too. But ideally, I love to talk to everybody before they come, because then we can make sure the group is the right fit for you. And that's one of my favorite things to do, is to make sure that people are joining the right group. I know my group's best. And if it's not, then we're able to connect you with one of the other facilitators. But most of the time when you're going through a divorce, we kind of have a few different segments or topics. I've seen in the past, like newly divorced and separated, maybe for people that are like still trying to decide that if they're going to move forward with the separation, that's what that might mean. So newly. I've seen groups for navigating through divorce and separation, meaning that people are already in the midst of it and they're like, well, what do I do? I'm just not sure. I've seen groups titled starting a new chapter. So people who are kind of like, I've already been doing this for a while, but I'm just not sure how to figure out the pieces that are ahead of me, the unknown that lies before me in my future, and finish rebuilding that identity that we were talking about before. And so typically we do try to put people together that identify with different phases of the divorce process. So that when you join your group, you find that people are at a similar place as you. One of the most important things to do to ensure that you're in the right group is stay in communication with your facilitator. So if you find you get to that group and you're like, I'm not really connecting with other people in the group, you can go to them and say, hey, I'm just not sure. Like, is there something else that you think might work better for me? Because maybe they do know of another group that's like, yeah, like my Tuesday night group actually might work better for you. Thanks for telling me,
That's so great. I mean, that's a huge benefit of like having this community be online and so well supported by software and mission, because, ordinarily, if you're lucky enough to have a support group in your like location and it's somewhere where you don't feel like you'll run into everyone that if that group doesn't feel like the right fit, you're kind of stuck with them or without anything. And so I love the idea of like, the goal is to try to get you into a group that most resonates. And if it doesn't, then there might be another opportunity for you to switch. What about like all genders? I think you had said to me that while it's open to all genders, that at least at this point in the company's journey, it tends to be much more women that join. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we do have a much higher percentage of women that join our divorce groups right now. But with that being said, we do have mixed gender groups. We're hoping one day that we'll get some groups specifically for men, because I think men and women have unique journeys through this process. But last I knew, we were doing mixed groups. But I think a large number of my groups have been women only in the past, just by chance. But men are very welcome.
Okay. There's one man in particular that I'm thinking about who went through his divorce and was like courageous enough to share his experience, which he started out like lawyering up, most aggressive lawyer in town, ultimately was able to change the trajectory of not just the legal aspect of his divorce, but the relationship that he had with his spouse. They're now like pretty close, which is like divorce goals. Most of us won't experience that. But anyhow, I want to mention it here. His book is Our Happy Divorce. And so great resource. I also love this book by Stephen Kane, and there's a lot of curse words in it. So if that offends you, don't get it. But he talks about his divorce and how he wishes, both he and his ex wish that they would have ended their marriage years before when they actually did. And so that's to say there's lots of resources available for all genders, but I wanted to mention two in particular that were written by men, because I think it's harder to find for a lot of men to find like resources that they need that really speaks to their experience. If when one of our attendees asks if they join the circles, would they be put into a new group or into an already running group?
Typically what we do is when people join circles, we form new groups so that everybody there is new and just forming connections together. But it's also more likely that people that are at a similar place in their journey and their emotional journey too. So that's typically what we like to do.
I see another question, and this one like resonates so much with me. She says, or he says, I'm lucky to have wonderful supportive friends, but worry that like I'm leaning on them too much and that's wearing them thin. How do you compare circles to support from our regular and real life friends? I just want to remind everyone that we all go through tough times, and like as a friend who's supporting other friends going through pain, like there's nothing more that I want to do than to be there for them. It gives people great joy and great purpose to help you through harder times. That being said, I get it. Like, I get that sometimes it feels like, gosh, all I'm ever bringing up is my divorce or my ex, and I'd like to sort of give them a break and also spend a little bit of time talking about something else, or maybe not talking about anything at all, but just watching a movie and, hanging out. So, can you answer this one? Like,
Yeah.
The difference between working with circles versus your in real life friends, and yeah.
Well, I think, Erin, you even kind of touched on it earlier, which is sometimes our friends bring in their opinions, their advice and their judgment and their bias. I think working with a support group or even an individual therapist, I want to keep in mind that that's always an option for people too. If a circle's not right for you, there's lots of ways to gain emotional support during this process that's considered professional emotional support. Professional emotional support offers unbiased opinions from people who don't know you. And that's the great thing about a circle. You're walking into a room of people that aren't in your life. They don't know you. And so they have no reason to judge you. They're not going to go back and tell your sister what you said. They're not going to go back and, talk about like how crazy your thoughts are that day, because they care about you, but they really just want to help you. And a lot of the ways that support groups help you is through sharing their own experiences. So they're not going to be sitting there advising you without understanding what you're going through, but they might say, hey, you know what? This is what I did. Do you think that might help? And so it's from a different perspective that they're able to assist you. With that being said, there's lots of people in our circles who do have great friends and family that they also lean on for support. But I think, Erin, they kind of feel when they joined, they probably felt a lot like you did, which is, I'd like to go back to having a little bit of a regular friendship with them where I'm not only talking about my divorce. I want to be able to go out with them and hear about their lives. And I want to be able to talk to them about if they went to that huge shopping sale at blah, blah, blah store, or if they tried that new restaurant, so that they can regain part of their normal life, but still have that place where they can come and be sad and be angry and let it all out.
Yeah. So that brings to another question, which is like, we do not divorce in a vacuum, right? A lot of things that we experienced as children or with our families or in our life, right? They come up during divorce and they are ever more present. So like, if you have post-traumatic stress disorder around being abused or something that you experienced as a child or with your spouse, like those are issues that are going to be very much up for you during divorce. So like the conversations, I would think, don't always completely like revolve around the word divorce, right? Like it's more than that. It's who you are in this moment and what challenges you're facing now. Is that like a reasonable statement?
I kind of like to think of it as the iceberg theory. So I'm not sure
Mhm.
how many of you have ever seen a picture of the iceberg theory, but it's like, hey, this part of the iceberg is what we can see above the water, but we actually have all of this iceberg under the water that when the ship is sailing past, part of that iceberg under the water could be what sinks the ship.
Mhm.
And so I know it's kind of hard to imagine without the picture, but at the same time, it's not the things that we see on the surface that are causing all of our emotional pain.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where you're going with that, is that there could be many things that come up for you when we experience emotional pain. When I think about the emotional challenges that people often experience during the divorce process or divorce journey, we talked about shame and guilt and kind of rebuilding the identity, but some of the other ones that come up are things like loneliness and fear, fear for the current or fear for the future, financial fear, like lots of different kinds of fear. But there's a lot of emotions that happen. And when we go through so many different kinds of emotions, trust becomes a thing too. Like
Mhm.
trust for your family, trust that you're going to have security in your future. Do you trust yourself to choose your next partner when you get to that stage? And so all of these emotions are what is triggering some of those past things, because you're kind of like, well, what is my proof that I feel this way right now? What is my proof that that if I'm lonely now, I'm always going to be lonely, And so that's where
Mhm.
all these things start to come up from.
We have a few more questions, but I want to put the slide up now. And Katie, maybe you can put in the chat, if it's not already, that the link that we're referencing here. So if you join for the 30 days free, Carrie, is there what's the fine print? If they join 30 days free, does that mean 30 days are free if they do commit to 3 months, or 30 days free whether or not they stay
Um,
on? What's the deal? Because I have a feeling once people join, they're
yeah,
likely going to want to stay. I know I have,
yeah.
like, in every support group that I've ever been with, but do you know any specifics around this promotion?
Well, I'm kind of a funny person, so I'm going to joke that I'm not the legal department, because I know you guys do a lot with legal. But my no, you get 30 days free. My best advice from a facilitator who works with the people who join, just send a quick email and make sure you're like, hey, I don't want to continue, because
Mm-hmm.
usually you join, you're kind of saying, hey, I want to join and I'm going to do 30 days free, but there's no catches. Circles is a
Okay.
really easy, flexible program. So it's not like you have to do a certain amount of time when you get that 30 days free. They're giving you 30 days free because they know that you're signing up because this is something that you feel like you need. Like you're at a place where you're like, hey, I need some emotional support. If it's not the right emotional support for you, I'm not going to make you stay in my group. They're not going to make
Yeah.
you stay there. I want to make sure you get the right emotional support. And there's often times that I talk to people and I'm like, hey, can I refer you to the support that you do need? As a facilitator, I want to make sure people are in the right places. And so this 30 days
Yeah.
free is all about letting you come, try it, and letting you choose to make the decision that, hey, this is working for me. That's all it is.
Great. All right. Tell us about anonymity and privacy, like how it's
Yeah.
handled, with your like personal information,
Mhm.
as well as like what's shared in the group.
Yeah. So in the group, so in the video group and in the group chat, everybody can only see your first name. So nobody has access to any of your information, like your email, your phone number, your last name, nothing of that sort. We do use our own platform. So we don't use Zoom or anything like that, where you're going to pop on and it have your last name or anything that you would be risking by using an outside service or something. And typically you'll get an email from Circles. So Circles has some of your information that you provide them, like your phone number and your email. And I have it as your facilitator, but otherwise it doesn't go any further than that.
Great. Okay. And is circles meant to be group therapy or more just like emotional support that would like supplement therapy or life coaching, something like that?
Yeah. So support groups, I always like to say you come because you get support from the group and the people that are there, which is a little different than mental health group therapy, because in mental health group therapy, you're usually working towards clinical goals with a diagnosis. So we're not here to diagnose you. We're not here to write, formal clinical medical notes on you or anything like that, which is what separates it from group therapy. But support groups are very well proven in the therapy world, and we're all mental health professionals, and it's a very common practice to provide support groups. But what I think is the difference here is that you're really, in a therapeutic way, you're using the knowledge and the support of the people around you who know the experience best.
Yep.
Sorry, I thought I lost you for a second. Still
Oh
here.
no, I'm still here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say the people who know you best to empower you through your experience.
Got it. Okay. Rapid fire. What does the program cost after 30 days?
Yeah. So it is $79 a month, which equates to $20 a week approximately. And yeah, that's pretty much
totally reasonable. Okay, great. And okay, the last couple of questions are like we've kind of answered and a little bit since they've made them, but I just want to make sure that everybody gets the information that they need. So when you're like, is it a questionnaire or like questions that help match you to the right group, or is that really what the personal interview is for, or is it a combination of the two?
It's primarily the questions on the website that help match you to the right group. So for instance, when you're looking for a divorce group, one of the questions might say, do you have kids under 18? So they might have groups that are specifically for people with kids. So then there's more conversations about co-parenting and how to work with your ex about co-parenting when you're placed into a group, even though that might not be in the description or something of that nature, because we have a lot of people looking for different groups. But when we ask you those questions, it helps us say, okay, you know what, this is going to be a good group because there's a lot of people with similar characteristics and looking for a similar topic here. So that questionnaire primarily does the first level of matching. But I think the call with your facilitator is really to sit, answer any other questions, understand what your expectations are of group, get to know you a little bit, and really help break down any barriers that you might have in attending group. And that welcome call can serve as a second level of ensuring that you're in the right group, although that's not its primary purpose.
Got it. Okay. So we're coming up on the end. I want to thank everyone for being here, and Carrie, you especially, for just like sharing so much and really making this transparent, being able to understand exactly what we can expect if we join one of these groups. Do we need a promotional code to access the 30 days free?
So the link that you guys have at Hello Divorce that you're going to be sending out in the email and through the chat, I believe is already set to provide people the 30 days free. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. One last question, which is if they do join a group, is there a possibility they could end up with you as a facilitator? It is a possibility. I always get asked that question. And I love having new people in my groups. And I am always so excited when people join my groups and they're like, I saw one of your webinars. I do webinars all the time for circles. So if you're interested in hearing more of my webinars, pop on there. But I probably will have some new groups coming up in the next couple of months. So I hope some of you join them.
Thank you so much. All right, so all the attendees, anyone who registered will get a copy of the video, a copy of our slide deck. Katie will make sure that we put not only the circles information, but a promotional code if you're just going to get started with your divorce through Hello Divorce. But if you're looking for more legal information, like how to get through the process with peace of mind, but keep your pocketbook intact and your stress levels low, then we do these Wednesday webinar series quite often. And we have a lot of webinars that we've already done that you can watch. They've been recorded that might really help you. You could also sign up for a free call for 15 minutes, and you'll get to know a team member, and we'll learn a little bit about you and help you understand what options you have to work with us. And if we're not a good fit, we'll help you try to find who might be. So that's all I got. Thank you everyone for joining. Carrie, I'm excited to follow this journey, watch how it unfolds. Circles is an amazing company. I think what you guys are doing is just extraordinary. And I hope that a lot of people in our Hello Divorce community will join you over there on some of those emotional support groups.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.